Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. Well, Piston fans, I hope you're not tired of hearing about Cade Cunningham and Cade Duren playing on the national team because we're going to get into it again today. We're going to talk about Cade and some of his comments about how he said it's going to be a fun year this year, which I've been saying. We're going to talk about Grant Hill and Steve Kerr, who are going to be picking the Olympic team next year for next summer, and the possibilities of Cade Cunningham being on that team. We're going to talk a lot about the national narrative that is really in our favor for once. Very little is usually said about the Pistons. When you watch the NBA today, you very rarely ever hear anything about the Pistons. When they show highlights on SportsCenter, even if Cade has a great game, you hardly see anything from him. But I am confident that just even this little blip in the radar from this summer has already got Cade into the national narrative of the NBA, and how I think that just really makes a difference in influence. But first, let's just get back into it. We're going to talk about how Cade and Duren dominated the USA team, playing on the select team of players who are considered supposedly lesser players. Anyway, the things I wanted to, it was so great to watch the videotape, and, they're out there on YouTube where you can see the whole game now, and so I got to watch that, and got to watch Cade shoot his pull-up jumper, which was really awesome last year. Even through those 12 games, he was like one of the best mid-range jumpers in the NBA, but he can knock that thing down like it's automatic from the free throw line. It was good to see him. He got to the rim, and he also shot a pull-up three off the dribble. It looked really good. Still not quite as much arc as I want on it, but it still looked really good, and I'm just real confident that he's going to shoot it. But people have talked about how strong he was, and you could see it at both ends of the court. I mean, he was guarding Jalen Brunson, and he's just being real physical and real hard to go around. Cade takes pride in his defense. Cade is a tough defender, and I think he's going to be a great defender. And we get this new coaching staff and Coach Burke working with him, and I just think that he's going to be exceptional defensively because he cares. He works hard. He tries, and he's, by all accounts, and including mine, he is a basketball savant. He is a very brilliant basketball player, and so it was great to watch him do that. When people were being physical with him, it was like it didn't even bother him. When he was going to the basket, people were trying to body up on him and move him, and he just kept on going, and it just didn't even face him. So that extra muscle that he added in the offseason looks like that's going to be helpful. But again, he got to the basket, he drew help, and just like that when he got to play that little bit with at the end of the last year when we traded and got Bagley and Cade through the lobs. Well, it's going to be a dynamic duo with him lobbing the ball up and working with Duren. Him and Duren have been playing together all summer. Even when Cade came into when Duren got drafted by the Pistons, Cade took Duren under his wings. I've heard Duren make comments about how much he loved Cade's leadership and how much everybody looked up to him. So, yeah, it was a lot of great things. But Duren, last year I said he was a boy playing among men, playing like a man among boys. And it was no different when he played against the USA team. He was physical. He timed his cuts, but there were some passes. He just threw this nonchalant little behind the back pass to Cade, and Cade got the ball back to him, and he scored. He threw this wraparound pass where to a guy in the corner. He's like under the basket on one side of the rim, and he just extended his arm, reached around the defender, and flipped it to the opposite corner. He just sees things. He drove to the basket once and drew the help, kicked it to the corner for a wide open shot. He just has this great feel for the game. The way he moves, he is a smart player. And so it just is going to be amazing watching those two play. And I think that Ivy and Thompson are going to be great. Asor is going to be really great to watch. I think we got a whole great squad coming up. And so, but this, like I said, we can't minimize this little boost that we've gotten from people watching. I mean, he was the story about the training camp, and it should be about the other team. They're going to play tonight This is Monday, and they're going to play tonight. I think against Puerto Rico, maybe in a scrimmage at 10 o'clock. But um, Tim Bontemps wrote a great article about Cade's domination for ESPN. We got to see that in The Athletic that Joe Varden wrote two articles about Cade. I saw Bontemps come on ESPN and he was on NBA Today, and they talked about how great Cade was and Duren, and people are talking about, well, this Piston team could be something to watch, and we're going to get into more of that. What they said on Brian Windhorst has a really good podcast. Um, so we're going to talk about what was said on that podcast. It wasn't all positive, but it was saying that, Cade is great, Duren is great, and we're on the right road, but we're not there yet. So anyway, let's get started more into it a little bit. First, let's go into dive into some things that Cade said. So Cade said, "I feel great. I'm happy to be here. Just to be in an environment like this and playing at a high level. The off season, you could be anywhere playing, so it's a lot of fun trying to make the most of it. People want to talk about how Asura will be able to take the pressure off Cade by guarding other people, but like I said, Cade wants to play great defense. Cade wants the challenge of playing good players. So not that that won't happen, and not that it's not a real thing, but I think some people like overblow how much Asura is going to help Cade and Ivy by taking off the pressure. But it was cool. Cade said, it's just fun to play and play against the best competition. So another thing, Cade has played on these teams. Cade has played wherever he's gone. He has been the leader. He has been the one that the players have gravitated to. He just has a special thing that you cannot teach, and he was born with, and he is smart enough and wise enough to do it, but it's not fake, and so the people buy into it, and just the way unselfish way that he plays. But he played on a I don't know if it was U19 or U18 team with all the best players, Mobley and Jalen Green and stuff, when those guys were all younger, and they said Cade was the leader, Cade was the best player, and it just is that way again. There were a lot of good players on the select team, but I know in a part way it was by design. Steve Kerr asked the select team to have Cade play like he was Luka, but still, the players, you could tell they wanted him to have the ball, and he was all about winning, and he made winning plays. I don't think he didn't miss a shot. He had 6 assists and 1 turnover in the 2 scrimmages. I guess the select team didn't do as well the next day, which is usually what happens. But anyway, Cade is he's super excited, and Cade said, "I'm super excited about this upcoming season. I think Coach Williams coming in, I feel like that's the best case scenario for us, and we got it done." And then he said the young guys that we have coming in are really going to help us. And I guess he's talking mostly about Asura and Sasser. He said, "I'm excited about them. They're great players on the court, and they're also really good people, and the people I'm excited to work with. So it should be a fun year." So that's from Cade Cunningham, our guy. It's not just the Piston fanatic me saying this is going to be a fun year, but Cade Cunningham is excited about it too, and that excitement is, I think, contagious, and we'll go on, and we'll get to see more of it. But again, Brian Windhorst. First, let's talk about Joe Verdon from The Athletic. He said, Cade looks and plays like a nearly perfect fit for the international game. He is 6'6" or 6'7", a solid 220, but he glides with the ball in his hands like a smaller player. Opponents can't move him, and that's what I talked about earlier, on offense or defense. He gets to the rim. He goes at his own speed. He seems to get wherever he wants to get. He draws help from the defense, which creates open shots for others. Like, again, he lob city to Duren, and it's going to be interesting to keep track of how many dunks that Duren gets this season from Cade. He draws help from the defense and creates open shots for others, and isn't afraid to take a three. So that's the whole game right there. He is just going to be a great player. He can score at the 3 levels, and he's, I think, going to be unstoppable. So Tim Bontemps, that he was on the Hoop Collective podcast with Brian Windhorst, but he also writes articles for ESPN. He's on NBA Today. He said, if I'm a Piston fan, from what I see, he's bulked up and he's not in a heavy way, but bigger and stronger, and he's getting to where he wants on the court, and he has a chance to have a really great year. Just a reminder that he was out of our mind because of the injury last year. So that's a big thing. Cade is, people when they talk about the upcoming season, very little is said about Cade until this happened, until this select team playing against Team USA happened. That's got people right in the center of their mind right now. Again, there's nothing else talking about in sports, so he was the story. Um, he says that he's still very much in play in Detroit and has a chance to be very, very good. So that is very, very true. He also went on to say they're still a year away. The Pistons are still a year away from having the right kind of ecosystem around Cade that's going to make sense. Again, like most of us know, we have too many centers and we have too many point guards. So that's kind of what they're alluding to. But he went on to say part of what this year is going to be is going to be them taking a look, seeing this roster and which guys fit and which guys don't, and starting to form a long-term planning standpoint of who fits with Cade and who doesn't fit with Cade. Some of those guys, you can see that we're going to find out that there's two or three guys that are going to be perfect fits, and then we're going to find out that there's going to be some guys that we're just not going to be going forward with. And so this is what I have been saying on this podcast for weeks, if not longer, that this is exactly what I've been saying. This is a year that we need to find out. So we just have to be a little bit patient. But in the meantime, we are going to see some great basketball, and we're going to see more winning. And I'm going to tell you, everybody I think gets overly hyped, including myself. I will say that, I predicted 15 more wins than last year, which is a huge jump for any NBA team. Very few teams make that big of a leap. But now that's what my head says. But now my heart's saying maybe 20. I probably overreacting, which is what fans do. So Joe Barden, that writes for The Athletic, said that Cade played brilliantly, and that made people ask why wasn't he on the USA team. Cade said load management was the deciding factor. So the term load management has negative connotations, which for me it does too, but not in this instance. When there's guys who just take nights off, every time there's a back-to-back, they take a night off, or they just take a lot. If they break their fingernail, they take a night off. So that's not what it's talking about. But he said load management was a factor, because here's a guy that missed the whole year last year except for the first 12 games and had surgery. So he said that it wouldn't be fair to Team USA or himself to be on the roster for the World Cup because he was in the final stages of his rehabilitation. So what he's talking about is, every day you're either practicing or you're traveling with the team, and so there's not time to do all the little things that need to be done with physical therapists or whatever for rehabilitation. And maybe there's going to be games back to back, or practices and games, and it's too much going on, and that his body's not quite ready to take on that yet. So I think that Cade is a great class act, and he made that decision. But he said they go over there and there's so much traveling, there's so much like really scheduled to do, like team practice and everything. I wanted to dedicate my summer, and this is important, to really make sure that as an individual I was ready for the upcoming season physically and mentally. And I talked about this in a recent podcast, that he's talking about he wants our team to be good. And so he wants his body and his mind to be in the best shape it possibly can at the start of the season. So that's partway why he didn't play. He could have pushed the envelope and tried it. There's Cade said, I want to play on the national team. He said there's no greater honor than to play for our country. Cade is going to be all about playing on USA basketball. And I said this, and I really think there's not spaces. If everybody, I heard a podcast that Hoop Collective podcast with Tim Bontemps and Brian Windhorst. There's a lot of guys. I mean, if Durant wants to play, he's going to be on the team. If LeBron wants to be on the team, he is. Devin Booker would be on the team. So there's a lot of great players that aren't even at this, going to play in the FIBA Cup games that are just phenomenal NBA players. So there's not many spots. I just have this feeling, this is my hot take, that if Steve Kerr and Grant Hill have a spot, they're going to put Cade Cunningham ahead of all the guys on the FIBA team. Maybe there's a couple that he would take ahead of them, but I just think that, like I read earlier, that they said that Cade's a perfect fit for the international game with his length and his strength, and so I really think that's going to happen. So I think that was really the deciding factor, Cade said. I didn't want to join the team, U.S. World Cup team, and still have to go to rehab and be part of everything that was going on. That's why I wanted to be on the select team, to be part of it. So so he's involved with USA basketball, and so we got a good run with some great players, but also keep my summer and keep my routine going. So whatever his rehab routine going, he wanted to do that, and he wouldn't have been able to do that if he played in the FIBA Cup. So anyway, Piston fans, I'm overzealous. I'm a Piston fanatic, and again, this is, I think, just great news for our team, and to get this positive public relations for our Detroit Pistons, which again we've gotten none hardly at the national level over the last how many years, 5 years or whatever. So I think this could give Cade a bump, or people talk about him getting most improved player. This isn't going to hurt that. If the Pistons were to jump out and be close to 500 and Cade were to play great, he could make the All-Star team. Not likely this year, more likely next year, but it can happen. And just this little boost and just planting the seed in the minds of the NBA people, the writers, the voters, the fans, I think this is just all a positive thing for our Detroit Pistons. But anyway, do something nice for somebody today. Help somebody out in any way that you can. Say a kind word to somebody. But if you also can, subscribe. Click on subscribe on YouTube and leave a thumbs up and put it on your notifications. Tell a friend about this podcast. I really appreciate it. Leave comments. I love them. And go Pistons.